Welcome to Exploration Arcanum. My name is Jason. Today we're joined by Marco Visconti, author, musician, occultist, and practitioner of Thelema. In this episode, Marco takes us through his journey into the occult and his book, the Aleister Crowley Manual. We'll also discuss the significance of Baphomet, the Egyptian aesthetic in Thelema, and the concept of true will. Marco also touches on Thelema's influence on music, literature, and his insights into the Thoth Tarot. If you enjoy this episode, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more esoteric conversations. Thank you.
Casting circles beneath the midnight sky. Incantations beneath the
Marco Visconti, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. How are you doing?
Thank you, Jason. It's fantastic to be here. This has been a bit of a long time in the making, right? We've been thinking about this for a while, and here we are. Thank you.
Well, like I was saying before, I really appreciate you coming on, and I want the audience to know that I appreciate the work that you've been doing over the years, especially for those of us who are solitary practitioners. You know, a lot of people can't join an order for various reasons, and your work focuses on the individual person, and I just have to say I really appreciate that.
I'm glad that this has been well received. You're right. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to present magic, and especially my own path, Thelema, in a way that people can approach it on their own without the need to join anything. In my case, it's really because I did join everything, and my experience hasn't been really good. And so I realized, there must be other people like me, and there are many. And so it's like, can we give something back? Can we find a way to create ways into this current? Because I think that Thelema has a lot to offer. Magic, of course, it's a great tool for all of mankind, but I think especially Thelema has a lot to offer. But there's a lot of gatekeeping still going, and there's a lot of cliques, and you belong to almost like this family that wars with that family, and that's you don't need any of that at all. Please hear it from someone like me who really plunged himself into that world. And I wish I didn't. I wish I did something better in my 30s because that's how I spent my 30s. And tell me, I lost a decade of my life, and that's not good.
Yeah. But speaking of that, how did you first become interested in the occult? Because you also have a music career.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Which came first?
I think they kind of came up in my life at the same time, in the sense that I told this story many times. I always love to tell it again. It was the summer of 1990, so 34 years ago now, which kind of dates me, right? And basically I was 12, and that summer a lot of things happened all at once. And one of those things was that completely by chance I discovered Aleister Crowley on a comic book. Like, there's this Italian comic book, it's still ongoing, called Martin Mister. And Martin Mister is a sort of like more esoteric occult Indiana Jones. So, like this kind of guy. And his stories span, everything. Like, they go through Atlantis, Lemuria, secret societies, magic, UFOs, you name it, right? But that summer in particular, there was this almost like, comic books always have the summer special, a little bigger book with a little thing on top. And that thing on top, that extra that they had for 1990 was basically a little book on the most mysterious men in history. And the title wasn't exactly that, but you get the gist. And of course, one of them, a big chapter, was on Aleister Crowley. And for me, I was like, okay, this guy seems cool, weird but cool. And at the time, I was starting to discover my other passion, which would have been music, as you mentioned. And of course, for me, it was guitars, and then metal, and then goth. And I was like, okay, this guy, Aleister Crowley, seems into that, right? So almost like a precursor of all of that. And the rest is history. So I would say maybe Crowley came a little bit earlier than music, in fact. But then again, it's really hard to pinpoint. I think together, that impulse came together.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things that I remember when I first started watching your content, and it really stuck with me, actually all these years, because you were doing, I believe it was a Star Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
And it may have just been the acoustics of the room you're in, but when you listen to it, and when you did the,
Mhm.
I forget what you say when you point, but it
Yeah.
felt like you could feel it. Like it felt like a bass that was just, every time you did it. Did you notice that when you were performing that?
So the Star Ruby is a bit of like my one of the rituals I like the most, right? And one of the rituals I'm more attached to, I'm the most attached to. So I pour a lot of energy in it every time I perform it. I think that I recorded that video, which is still online on my channel. I really don't do YouTube anymore. Life came many different ways, but there's still something is there on my YouTube channel, and I think there's a mixture of the recording equipment that I had, which was basically my phone, right? Because I didn't have anything else at the time. I was just starting. This was literally 4 years ago, the height of the pandemic. I was stuck in this beautiful big house in Glastonbury in Somerset, which is southwest England. I live in London now, and so basically, I think it's a mixture of the acoustics of the room, the fact that I have a very booming voice when I go into that ritual, and then I think I did add some very very little reverb and very very little delay on the recording itself, because
Okay.
of course like I mean I would do that, right? Because I mean I've been a music producer most of my life, so I was like, yeah, I mean this sounds good, but can we do something else? But then again, I think it was a mixture of all the things. But in general, I think that the Starubi, however, it's a ritual. If you see it well performed, it really really leaves an impact on you. So if you ever have the chance, maybe try it yourself. You'll see how that ritual is really something.
Which actually leads to a good topic on your book, the Aleister Crowley Manual. Again, I appreciate that you make content for a solitary person, and this book actually had a lot of great information for a person who may not be able to sort
Hmm.
through all of Crowley's books. You kind of get to the point.
Yeah.
Um, but what was the inspiration for the book? And the images, they are kind of comic book look
Hmm.
like. Was that intentional?
So first of all, that book really came as a result of all the work I was doing again during the lockdown years. Right, during the lockdown years, I found myself, without a job anymore, like many of us did, and I had a lot of time, on my hand, and also just before the pandemic, I already did start a Patreon. Basically, I started Patreon and I bought a Zoom, subscription right before the pandemic. I don't know if this was like foresight or whatever. I hope I didn't have that foresight anyway. So a lot of time on my hand, these things to make use of, and then I start accumulating a little following around me. Some of them are still there with me, to be fair, to this day, 4 years later. And as I said, there were people that were interested in magic, interested in Thelema, but with no aspiration or even any intention ever to join any order, right? For all the reasons people don't want to get involved with things. People cannot get involved in these things, if they have a public figure, etc., etc. So the book really was at first trying to edit together and give it a coherent format to all the material that I published on Patreon over these years, right? And then one of the people that were working with me at the time was this artist from Germany called Mars Neumann, and is also known as Adventures of Amagus. He has I just met him online and we started talking, and I really like his style. He already did self-publish some books with that style, with the cartoon style, and I was thinking, you know what, this is not only this guy is really really good at creating diagrams, and it's also, I think he is bringing in something new, like magic and Thelema, ceremonial magic and Thelema is always being seen as intense, and maybe some would say even stuffy. And I was thinking, maybe this is a way to give this current like a lick of paint. And I think it worked very well because, one of the things that I still get a lot of credit for, and in fact, the credit really goes to Mars, is the fact that all the diagrams, all the images are very clear and feel new and modern. At the same time, I also recently recently, like a few in the last year or something like that, some shit for it, because you always have like the serious Thelemites, they were coming to me and say, oh no, this is not serious, this is not good. Interesting enough, the book did very, very well. Like I think it's already in its second print. It sold around 10,000 copies. It's been an incredible success. Keeps selling. Like it's been out almost 2 years now. It keeps selling. I think as you said, it is a bit of a milestone. Like it's a book that if you don't know anything about, I didn't write this book for Thelemites. I wrote these books for people that are just curious and they want to try and do things immediately. It also has like an Italian edition now, and the Polish edition is coming maybe early next year. And so it was interesting to me because the Italian edition is already a good success as well. But the Italian esoteric scene, especially the Italian Thelemic scene, is very, very tiny. Like imagine, like in general, esoteric scene is tiny in the world, right? Not many people really are interested in this, but the Italian scene is tinier. Like something is minuscule. Everybody knows each other, literally. And so I really get people coming to me and say, well, Marco, the book is good, it's very well written, but those images, they really tainted it. Like it could have been so much better. Now people don't take it seriously. And I was like, you know what, I get it, but I didn't write it for you. I wrote it for the new people. I didn't write it for the ones who are so nitpicky about things that don't matter. I wrote it for people who are genuinely curious and they might want to generally do magic as opposed to always talking about magic.
Right.
So,
Right. And now, speaking of images, a question that I've always had was on the cover. You have it's called the Aleister Crowley Manual, but you have Baphomet on the cover instead of Crowley. Was there a reason for that?
So first and foremost, again, the title is another thing that I get a lot of criticism for, because I spoke quite vocally over the years how I think that Thelema has to move past Crowley, which doesn't mean, forgetting Crowley or not giving Crowley his due. More about remembering that this is a current, this is a living tradition, and the constant focus on the prophet and on the starter only, I think it's detrimental. And I think there's plenty of evidence of the fact that it's detrimental, to the point that contemporary orders, the ones that a lot of people cannot join, but a lot of people also still put a lot of maybe aspiration on. They really are glorified Crowley fan clubs or book clubs. There's very little else there. Anyway, unfortunately, the rules of marketing go fly in the face of what I want, and the title was really something that the publisher imposed on me. I even write about it in the book itself. There's a little tiny paragraph and say why the title. My original title was Thelema After Tears, which is a bit of a game on magic without tears. Yeah, and because my point is that, like, if you're really interested in Thelema, you'll go through a lot of tears, because it is a challenge. When you really engage with it, it is a challenging endeavor in the sense that it will change you and it will force you to change, but also that the general Thelemic community isn't the most welcoming that there is out there. So lots of tears. But unfortunately, let's say the publisher told me very clearly from the very beginning, it's like, we love your book, we love your style. You don't have a name yet, and Crowley sells. And I was like, okay, that's what it is. I'm gonna give you a little anticipation. I just finished writing my second book. I'm gonna go into all the editing phase. The book is gonna come out in October 2025, so pretty much a year from now. That's how long it takes, to prepare a book for publication. And again, my title was Awakening the Angel, because it's going to be on, if my first book is about the first steps in Thelemic magic, this book is how you move from magic into mysticism. You had all the concept of Holy Guardian Angel. Why is that important? And I go very much in deep. It's a much bigger book as well. Well, Crowley, sorry. The publisher told me, yeah, I mean, the title is good, but we need to put Aleister Crowley's name in that. And I was like, yeah, I know you were going to tell me that. So now, why is that? And then also, this is why there's Baphomet on that cover, right? Because Baphomet is one of the least known but very important Thelemic icons and symbols. It represents the union of the opposites. The first of all, I would say the recognition of the opposite, the recognition of polarities, of duality, and then the summa of it, like the bringing together of it in one coherent symbol in a union, right? So that maybe something else can be done afterwards, which is, the annihilation of polarities itself. So in many ways, Baphomet is there as a very important icon of the Thelemic system as a whole.
Yes.
So yeah, much more than Crowley, if you ask me.
I know that there is quite a history of Baphomet, and like the Templars had an association, or at least the accusations against the Templars had an association. But something else that I have always thought was interesting about Thelema was the Egyptian aesthetic. And I know you've written about that a few times with so Crowley, for the audience, Crowley and his first wife Rose Kelly were in Cairo in 1903 1904 when he received a message from a being called Iwas through Rose Kelly, and that's how the Book of the Law came to be.
Yeah.
But do you think that it was because of where they were that it developed this? Like, if they had been in Rome, would they have a Roman mythology aesthetic?
I think you make a very compelling point, and to be fair, yes, I absolutely think that the Egyptian flavor of Thelema is a mask that has been done by these entities, these preter-human intelligence, as Crowley called them, or today we'll call it NHIs, non-human intelligences, right? They found a convenient mask to present themselves to Crowley. And some will say to Crowley and Rose, because possibly, the idea that Rose was in the room as well and he was acting as scryer, it's very compelling, because if we look at the history of how scrying has always been done from John Dee onwards, there's always a magician and a scryer, a magician and that also becomes also the scribe. It really feels like it could be something like that. And maybe Crowley, airbrushed the figure of Rose Kelly from history. We don't have enough evidence, but I would say it's compelling. So I think that, to go back to your question, yes, at the same time, those entities, the Thelemic gods, even calling gods is weird for me, because I see them more as processes of vectors of transcendence, as I like to say, magical formula, if you want. But they donned this Egyptian garb because I feel they were in Egypt. Yeah, so if they would have been in Rome, maybe we would have a very different flavor of Thelema. If they would have been in India, etc., 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 right? I have to say, I'm not the only one who thinks this way about Thelema. There's also a lot of people that will swear by this gospel that no, these were like a resurgence of the old Egyptian Neteru, and in fact, Thelema is a return of Egyptian Heka and Egyptian religion. It's weird for me, because when you actually to think in these terms, because when you actually look at Thelemic messages and what's written in the Book of the Law itself, what's written in the holy books of Thelema, what's written in other rituals and other instructions, I don't see much Egyptian there, Egyptiana there, right?
Right.
There are some current incarnations or claimant lineages of the AA. Outer College, for instance, the one that was led by J. Daniel Gunter up until his death recently, that really went on the Egyptian style of Thelema. Personally, I think that I wouldn't call it right or wrong. Those are masks, right? In one of our holy books, it's very well written that, in Liber 65, which is the book that speaks of the nature of the Holy Guardian Angel, it's written that you should not concentrate on what is an image of an image, but to go to the point. And so in many ways, I think that if the Egyptian gods speak to you, those are a good image of an image for you to approach the mystery. Right. For me, they never really did, right? Other things did. Like, I had an interest in Egyptian mythology, but also in Celtic mythology when I was a child. Like, those were my way-ins to mythology as a whole. And so, in many ways, I think that it's okay to concentrate on images at first, but going to the core of it, it's what matters.
Gotcha. Now, one of the aspects of Thelema that is pretty much the core is the idea of the true will.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've always explained to people, and I'm sure this is just me, so feel free to tell me I'm wrong. One of the things that I took when I first started studying Thelema was it's not about doing what you want, it's doing what you're meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that at a purely base level to basically it. Well, I'll tell you the story. So it was during the pandemic. I had spent a large chunk of my life doing random jobs, but in the back of my head, I've always had this voice saying, "You need to be a writer, or you need to be telling people stories." But I've always ignored it because I didn't. There's no money in that. Nobody's going to care. Why are you doing that? And so finally, I said, "Okay, I'm going to do what that voice told me to do and start doing this stuff." So I'm not going to do what I want. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. And I based that off of reading the Book of the Law when I first got started. And it's opened a lot of doors. Like, for example, we're talking right now.
Yeah.
So, how do you view that? Or is that too base? Is it meant to be much higher than that?
Absolutely not. I think that what you're speaking of is definitely the right impulse. Okay, you're absolutely right. The true will of Thelema, which in fact it's a term that never appears in the Book of the Law itself. The term pure will does, and pure is a much better term, I think. Unfortunately, Crowley, for whatever reason, went for true when he started to, popularize or at least promulgate this idea. But the concept of pure will is exactly what you mentioned, right? It's something that comes maybe not from the head, but from the heart. And by heart, I don't mean your emotions, your feelings. I mean something deeper, right? And that tells you, even if, and it always tells you, there's always this voice there in the back that tells you, go here, do this, do that. And we really almost always ignore it, right? Again, in Liber 65, this voice comes out to be the voice of Adonai. And Adonai, it's a Hebrew term, means the Lord, but it's also the true name of the Holy Guardian Angel. So in many ways, if you think about it, it's almost like our divine self that's buried inside us, the guide us always, right? And we always hear that voice. It's only when we finally recognize it that we start follow its directions, right? At the same time, it's also true that there, in the AA, for instance, this stage is called the vision of the angel, and it's basically the prerogative of the neophyte, right? Like, so as you commit to this path, and by the way, the path of the AA, it's really like you decide to become a PhD in Thelema. It's for very few people. Like the AA, it's super complicated, has a lot of requests. You don't need the AA to be a Thelemite. I just want to say that. However, what you're describing is codified in the AA because the prerogative of the neophyte is the vision of the angel. When you finally realize this impulse, okay, I would say that in contemporary discourse around pure will and true will, this idea then becomes one and the same as the knowledge and conversation with Holy Guardian Angel, which is really not, right? The knowledge and conversation is a full union with your divine self. It's almost like you've been listening to those voices for a long time, you've been following, and then you come to the sanctuary, to the Holy of Holies, where you finally can basically become the bride to the groom being the angel, like so, and then that union, which is very, very deep, mystical in nature, can happen. In my if you want my 2 cents, you've been doing this, right? You're going in that direction. However, the true realization of the knowledge and conversation, it's something that's a lot deeper, and it's, again, I would like to say, it's not something that brings you fame, success, fortune. It could be that for some people. I've seen it. It's more that somebody come into almost like they level up. Their lives become something else,
Right.
and also like they become sons to, and so they start to attract others to their orbit. So yeah, it starts with listening to that voice, and it starts with finally following that voice. But the final realization, it's something a lot more complex. Like I was saying earlier on, like this is what I've been writing about in this second book to come out next year. I hope I will try to. It's as you can imagine, it's very hard to put a mystical experience in words. A lot of people have tried, Crowley have tried, and up and downs, fortunes doing that, because it's an experience that defies words, it defies language. But yeah, that's it.
Well, that was actually going to be my next question, because your work gets translated into different languages. Is there any concern that something may get lost in translation, or something may not translate right between English, Italian, Spanish, and etc.?
Yes, yes, very, very much. I was very, very lucky that I was allowed to do the Italian translation myself, and my partner helped me with that, because again, I've been living here in the UK for 13 years now. Italian is a really, really, really difficult language. A lot of rules and grammar and whatnot, and so I was really lucky to have somebody who could stick with me and say, Marco, you just wrote something absolutely absurd here. Can you please do something better? And she helped me a lot. So, but unfortunately, I don't know Polish, right? I know that this book has been, will be translated in other languages as well, like German and Portuguese, which I don't know. Like I know a little bit of German. I can read a little bit of Portuguese. But that's about it. And Polish, certainly, I don't know any of that. You just have to trust that the publisher chooses the right, the right translator and go with it. I know this also because that's another story I like to tell. When I first discovered Crowley in the 90s in Italy, we only had Magic and Turing Practice, Liber ABA, translated, nothing else. And it was translated like I think that the translator really, he was clearly a good translator, but not a magician, and clearly had no idea about what it was translating, because chunks were missing, things taken out of context, like there was literally paragraphs missing. And I was like, oh, okay, I see that, right? I gotta say, for all my dislike of contemporary Ordo Templarientis OTO as an ex-member, they've done a fantastic job of finally translating it in Italian, and that this edition came out in 2021, 2022, I think. But the previous edition was released in 1976, so almost 50 years later, we finally have a very, very, very good translation of Liber ABA. With all the notes of, also by Hymenaeus Beta. Again, a person I particularly don't like, but he did a fantastic job. The blue brick is the one he edited, and that's still the edition you want, because it's fun, it's phenomenal, it's really well done. But yeah, it's hard. It's really, really hard. It gets lost in translation, to the point that I think that certain things should not be translated. Famously, the Liber 15, the Gnostic Mass, very famous ritual. Like a lot of people that have the chance to go to an OTO event, to a public Thelemic event, will see this ritual, which is a fantastic ritual. In Italian, it's still beautiful, but there's all an element of musicality. There are songs in anthems in Liber 15 completely lost in Italian. The things just don't rhyme in Italian. Like if you want to maintain the message, either you find a poet, as good as Crowley, that to try and translate it, which is very hard, or it gets lost in translation, and that's really a pity. So that's a big problem. Yeah.
So, speaking of translations, there's a movie called The Girl of My Dreams that was released a few years ago that apparently you were the inspiration for one of the characters.
Yeah.
And was that ever released outside of Italy?
So basically, the story goes as such. The movie was inspired by a novel. And the novel is called La ragazza dei miei sogni, or The Girl of My Dreams, by this Italian author called Francesco Dimitri, which is a good friend of mine. We've been friends for like 20 odd years now, even more. Gosh. And we actually got to know each other because at the time he was, we were very young, both of us, and he was actually studying for his master thesis in anthropology. And I guess we started chatting on, email list. Just to give you an idea, late 90s, early 2000s, if you have an email list, right? Yeah. And because at the time, I was already one of the few online talking about these things. In retrospect, I was really cringy. In retrospect, I really should have not been talking at all, because what do you know when you're 20? But that's a long story, maybe for another time. But yeah, I mean, like, he reached out and we started talking because he was genuinely curious about magic, and eventually he became a journalist of quite some renown, and eventually he transitioned into a novelist, and he's been a very successful novelist both in Italy and in the UK ever since. The Girl of My Dreams is a story about, guy falls in love with a girl. She's very weird. She might not be a girl at all. And out of sudden, a friend of his reappears in his life, and this guy is a magician and tells him, well, that girl is really not a girl. It's a succubus. You should do something about it. And so basically, since Francesco needed this character to be a little bit, bigger than life, and he needed basically somebody who felt like, again, that could come in and rescue the situation. And at the time, I was quite a successful DJ. Eventually, I would become quite a successful musician in the goth industrial scene. But I also had this interest in magic, and I was practicing magic. So basically, that's what the character is a DJ, goth musician of some renown that is also very good at magic. The movie came out in 2007, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been almost a decade already now. It wasn't a huge success. It was a smallish production. It was still like, mainstream famous as production. And I had to coach the main guy called Nicolas Vaporidis, which is a class, a top celebrity in Italy. It was very fun on talking on Skype, because I was already living in London at the time, talking in Skype, so pre-Zoom, right? With this guy that I know very well as a famous actor, and say, well, no, yeah, you need these tattoos, not that one, or you need to say this thing, not this one. And to be fair, he was really interested and very, very polite, and we didn't kept in touch, but yeah, it was for a good year we were talking on Skype all the time.
Nice.
And then, like I said, the movie wasn't a big success because it wasn't a big production. But I think it's a decent movie, right? Especially for Italy, that these things don't get done in Italy, right? Like, you just don't get this. In the last 10 years, there's been some decent-ish, horror movies being made, and this was billed as a horror movie. There's really no horror at all. It's an urban fantasy movie, but. Yeah, I mean, like, I think for a while it was available on Amazon Prime. I don't think it is anymore, which is a pity. If you happen to get it on Prime or something like that, get it, because they did subtitles for that, so you can see it with English subtitles. But yeah, it was a fun experience, right?
I'm going to I'll link the trailer so everyone can watch it, because I thought it was very interesting.
Like I said, like, top-notch photography. It was a real movie. It wasn't something done by, with your phone, or it's a real movie in the cinemas in Italy. It wasn't a big success. People in Italy did not understand it, right? Which is interesting, because the book was a big success. Like, the book was really what propelled Francesco as a novelist. It sold a lot of copies, and by that I mean like 200,000 copies, something like that, like a lot of it, right? And but yeah, the movie wasn't well received at all by maybe it was ahead of its time. If they did it today, possibly people would be more receptive, right? It was 2007. Sorry, not 2007. It was 2007 was the book. 2017. Yeah. So 2007 was the book. 2017 was the movie. Yeah.
I think I think it'll gain. I guess a cult following is the term.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because it reminded me of a Dark Song. Have you ever seen that movie?
Absolutely, I love a Dark Song. I did a live stream watch with Justin Sledge of Esoterica and Aaron Leach, where basically me and Aaron were discussing our very contrasting views on what the Holy Guardian Angel is, and Justin in the middle trying to pacify. I mean, we're good friends, the three of us, so nothing to pacify. But yeah, I love it. I love a Dark Song. I really love it. It's, for me, maybe that is the best movie ever. Again, not the real depiction of the Abramelin. A lot of problematic things here and there, but the payoff at the end of the movie, 100% top notch, right?
As a musician, are there any bands that you like right now, like that maybe have a occult Thelemic thing to it, because like one of the things that came to my mind when you were saying the current was Current 93. Have
Yeah,
you ever,
of course,
right?
of course.
Um,
I'm a
I
big fan. I'm a big fan of Karen today, right?
and that's the first thing that came to my mind. And it's funny because there's so many bands that have either have had Thelemic um tuned songs like Tiamat had Cain. They talked about New
Mm-hmm.
Wheat. Andrew WK had an entire song dedicated to
Yep.
Babylon. Bring Me the Horizon has the
Yeah,
hexa,
the
the
universal hexagram. Yeah,
right. And I was just like, okay, well, obviously Jay-Z had a sweater that said "Do What
yeah,
Thou Wilt." So I mean,
yeah.
so
I mean,
how
if we go back in time, I mean, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were
right,
into that, right? Yeah, absolutely. Led Zeppelin, famously, right? I think that Thelema has always inspired the arts and especially music. I will tell you, in my years in the OTO, you get to know who's really a member, who's really being involved for real, and there's very few of them, right? Very, very few musicians, famous musicians especially, have ever been. It's never been for them more than an aesthetic pursuit or a passing interest, which is understandable, right?
right,
Maybe also because again the OTO is so dysfunctional and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to, like, for me, one of the bands that really that for me was like a light bulb moment. I was like, oh, there's musicians that I like are into this. Was Tool in 1996 when Anima came out. I was just turning 18. I was being at that point. I was just about to become very serious with both music and magic, because I was pursuing initiation in the AA. That would happen a few years later. And I was starting with playing with bands, and then a few years later, again around the same time that I finally was initiating the AA, would start like my career as a professional musician. But Tool in '96 was like, oh wow, okay, they're not overt, they're not plastering it,
right,
with all these things, and also, but the message is there, like there's something there. Um, at the same time, you also had a lot of like black metal bands, death metal bands that were starting to be very overt with it, and I never liked it. It felt a bit plasticky to me.
okay,
I like the music, right? I'm a metalhead through and through, even in my late 40s as I am right now. But in general, I always liked the what Tool was doing with it. It's there. It's subtle, and that I would say over the time, Danny Carey is real. The drummer is the real like Crowley head. Now of course you go to their gigs, big Star of Babylon. It's pretty clear. It's there. Like it's
right,
pretty. They're telling you this is. I mean, this is a part of us. It's Thelema.
right.
Again, not a member though that I'm aware of. At least definitely not OTO. Might be AA. I don't know. I can't tell you that. Current 93 was another big one. Current 93, Coil, the first generation of what it's called like real industrial music, which is not so much the music that I became popular for, because we were like maybe second or third generation, and we were like really mixing it with techno, with house, with electro. Like the first generation, the late 70s into the 80s. So what would that also would become known as apocalyptic folk. Current 93, exactly like
Okay.
the first start. Those are bands that I wouldn't say that I still listen to them nowadays, mostly because some of them, not Current 93, but some of them really showed their face in recent years with political allegations that I really don't condone. Far right allegations are not my thing. But the music is still great. Can't deny that. And when you grow up with certain music, it's hard to let it go. But you will never hear me, promoting those bands anymore.
Yeah. Um, on your website, you list quite a few courses.
Mhm.
I took your Quipoff
Yeah,
course.
you did
Um,
exactly.
that was amazing.
Thank you, thank you.
One of the courses that I was looking at was the Thoth Tarot
Yeah,
course. Can you tell us a little bit about the Thoth Tarot and how is
yeah.
it different from regular tarot or tarot?
Oh, absolutely. So the Thoth Tarot really is supposed to be the pictorial explanation of the entirety of the Thelemic current. And so, as you can imagine, it's a tall order. It's very complex when you go to the core of it. What Crowley set up to do was to, first of all, recognize the centrality of the tarot as a storytelling device, and also as an initiatory device to explain the ins and outs of of magical reality, if you want. But also, it was set up to update the cards to reflect the lessons of the New Year magic that he ushered in, right? And so, the Thoth Tarot is almost completely different from a traditional Rider Smith weight deck, or especially even the Marseille deck, because certain cards have a completely different meaning.
Right.
I was writing about this exactly this morning. I wrote a Substack about. I have a Substack where basically I realized that I could not do YouTube videos. It's really not me. Don't want to do it anymore. But I can write, So I started a Substack, and that's what if you're curious about what I'm doing, Substack is where it's at. And I was writing a little a summary. Think a little bit of thoughts on the retreat that just ended in France. I just hosted a retreat in the south of France, in Occitania, which has been a great success. And the card of the devil came up, and I realized, this is a perfect example to see how different the Thoth Tarot is from everything else. Because in the traditional tarot, the devil is a bad card, right? It talks about addiction, talks about slavery, mental slavery, depending on others, depending on your own fears, etc., etc. In the Thoth Tarot, it really represents, Crowley speaks of it as the Himalayan he-goat that always strives for highest peaks and go further and further and further. It's a symbol of initiation in many ways. In Thelema, it's a symbol of going further. It's also a symbol of recognizing polarities and bringing together. It's again maybe Baphomet, right? I go back to what we were saying at the beginning of this chat. So, long story short, the course that I am offering on my website, it's yet a different approach at teaching the tarot. I guess you got it, right? I always try to invent new things, or at least propose new ways of approaching it. And basically, it's really about, not so much about teaching you how to read the cards. There is a part of it. There are some lessons on that. And those lessons basically teach you not to focus too much on spreads, but focus more on recognizing the elemental dignities of the card and how they interact with each other. But the bulk of that course is about, there are 22 major arcana, which are the ones that really tell you the magical experience of tarot. And I present 22 path working. So you can sit down, listen to the path working, and immerse yourself in the card. The same way I present the idea of tarot as portal in my book, right? But here instead of trying to create the path working or try to receive the ideas that come from the card by just looking at it, you have my voice in that case that go guide you. And of course, I did some production techniques in those path workings. I did put some hemisync, some binaural beats in it, so that people can get more into a more relaxed state. And it's been a great success. Again, of the courses I propose, maybe Magic Foundations is still the most successful, because it's the basics. Of course, people are drawn to it, but the other one has been a big success as well. I'm doing a super condensed version of it in a few weeks' time. Basically, I'm gonna condense 6 months in 60 minutes, which is good. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but basically, I'm gonna do one online version of this for the College of Psychic Studies, which is a fantastic institution here in London. They do also a lot of things, both in person and online, and it's on my website. You can follow it, and that will be basically a live session. So if you're curious, I'm going to be there.
Now, you mentioned the trip that you just did to the south of France. Yep. You're going to do one next year in California, yep, which I really want to come to.
Well, you should. There's still some spots left.
But tell me about these trips. What's the idea behind these events?
So, as we just said, right? I started doing all of this online. I started doing all of this online during the pandemic. as a way to offer an opportunity for those who have no other options, right? Those who are interested in all this stuff, but they don't live in London, or they don't live in New York, they don't live in LA, or even think of it, they don't live in Milano, which is, believe it or not, there's a lot of events happening in Milano right now in Italy. Strange to say, but it is. At the same time, 4 years in, I realized that it is time to go back to the in-person experience. There's an element of magical teaching and of interaction that just cannot be replicated online yet. I don't know. It could well be that in 10 years' time, we will have, functioning haptic virtual reality, and we will do this, Zuckerberg's metaverse that nobody speaks about because clearly it was a terrible idea at the time. But, maybe in 10 years' time, we will have the technology. I mean, look where we were 10 years ago, where we are now, right? This would have not been possible 10 years ago.
Right.
So it's really possible that, things will change. But right now, I think that it's time to reappropriate of an in-person experience. And there was a lot of people asking me for that. Also, I realized that with this first retreat I did in the south of France called Towards Heliopolis, it was a bit ambitious because it was basically, we spent a week all together in this beautiful, beautiful house. And the idea was doing magic classes in the morning and then prepare ourselves for, afternoon trips to sacred places all around the Pyrenees. And I had to really handpick people. And so we went to a lot of screening on Zoom, the only thing we could do, right? To try and find the right people and trying to find the right match. And I'm glad to say it did work because we had the most. It was a really a touching experience that we have, and I just posted on Substack. Other, I know that others are going to comment on that because they were like, you captured the moment, and that really proved to me that there's something you cannot do online, and maybe this is why people really go and chase magical orders, thinking that that's exactly the same experience they will get. And I'm telling you, it might be true for some, but overall, I always saw that if you don't do that intense vetting at first, which is not done in magical orders, I can tell you right away, especially not in the OTO, everybody comes in and very few people stay. But if you don't do that intense vetting at first, you end up with people that just don't mix and match, and if they don't mix and match, everything else fades away, right? Now without sitting on the laurels of this big success, we're going to do another one in Joshua Tree in the desert. It's going to be, it is called Stairway to Heaven, and I'm going to do it with Peter Lavenda. Me and Peter Lavenda, big name. I don't think I need to introduce him, but if you're watching to this and you don't know who Peter Lavenda is, just Google him. You know him. Peter is an incredible. I think he's one of the pillars of contemporary culture, and has been for 50 years. Right, yeah. The man has done everything and beyond. Right now is just very busy promoting his last book with Tom DeLonge. Secret Machines War just came out. Bestseller, obviously, because it's Peter. And he's really at the core right now of trying to convince the world that the UFO, UAP craze is important, but the real core is magic. Mm-hmm. And so a year ago, we decided to try and do something online on my platform, Magic Without Tears, which is my platform. It's been a great success. We had 50, 60 signups. It was really we did it for 8 weeks. Great. And then I was like, Peter, why don't we do it live? And I thought he would say, Marco, shut up. What are you talking about? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, okay, you want to do 2 days, 3 days? Oh, let's do a week. So we ended up, we're going to do 5 days in Joshua Tree. This experience will be a little bit different from the one I just done, in the sense that it's for more people. There are 50 slots. Half of them are already gone, right, as they're right now, and we haven't really promoted it. We just put a filler out, and they're just going. I think it will sell out pretty soon, because we will do some promotion in the coming weeks. But in general, this is going to be more we have hired the Institute of Mental Physics, which is the Joshua Tree Retreat Center. In the mornings, we will be Peter doing classes and lessons, and then will be lunch, and then I will do the magical part, which is again path workings and preparation for then the events that will happen in the evening. Because in the evening we also hire the Integratron, which is this incredible structure in Joshua Tree. There's going to be sound baths. There's going to be night sky, sky gazing, and basically we will try to use magic to contact whatever is out there. And it's going to be pretty much in the same area where Jack Parsons did his famous, Babylon working. So I think something good is coming out of it, and I think you should join us. I hope I'm going to see you there.
I hope so. And speaking of Parsons, we could go another hour if we want to go there. All right. So last question, and this goes back to the solitary practitioner aspect. Someone's just finding Thelema. Say they watch this video and they're interested in learning Thelema. What would you say is the best place to start for someone who is just finding out about Thelema?
Some people will say that I should reply to your question with my book and my courses. However, I think that I've been putting those together exactly for the person you mentioned. However, there is a lot of free material out there that everybody can peruse without paying a single cent to anyone, right? Not even buying a book. Just go on hermetic.com. Which is not a great site, but it does have the entire corpus of Crowley, minus one or two things. And you can read it, and you can say, this thing, I jive with this, I don't like this. And if you don't like, to be fair, this is my message. If you read Crowley, and if you don't like it, maybe it's not for you, okay? Mm-hmm. And that's fine, because there's so much more out there that you can go and you can explore. I would say that if you decide that it is for you, however, please wait before joining anything. Unfortunately, the orders you can easily join, the ones you can find online, you can send an application in, they are not always the best choice for newcomers, right? There's a lot of politics involved, and maybe your local body or your local lodge can be good, but the entire corpus is still rotten at the core. So read Crowley, hermetic.com. It's free. You can see if you like it. Try some of the practices. Give yourself a month to try Liberesh. Give yourself a month to try the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram and see if you like it. See if you have a love for that. If you do, buy my book and buy my courses, because they're the best things ever.
And I think that's the best way to end it.
Sounds good to me.
So we're going to put links to all of Marco's work and website and social media in the description below if you'd like to give him a follow, and I highly encourage that you do. Marco, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jason. This has been crazy. Thank you.
Casting circles beneath the midnight sky, incantations beneath the shadows fly, summoning secrets, embracing the darkness, dancing in the world of hidden